Hey y'all, welcome to How'd You Get So Sweet, where we hold space for Black women to share their stories, their joy, their rest, their resilience, and all the ways we cultivate sweetness in our lives. Today, I have the absolute pleasure of sitting down and having a good, juicy-ass conversation with my good friend Almetta. Welcome to the show. I'm really excited to have you here.
Oh my gosh, Rakita, thank you so much for having me. I'm so grateful. I was looking forward to this time together. And, we always have some good conversations. I love the juicy conversations. It was great.
We do. You know what? Listen, that's the thing about Black women, okay? We can sit down and think that we're not about to do nothing magical, and it still turns out magical.
That's right. That's our ways of being, ways of creating alchemy that is just innate. I feel like it reminds me of Blackfoot Nation that talks about having self-credentialing or the self-actualization. And I feel like that's us, like that indigenous part of just like, we come in with the alchemy.
Yeah. Oh, I need to write that down. So we come in with the alchemy.
Yeah.
So before we get started, tell the people about yourself.
Oh my gosh, I am so grateful to be in community with y'all. Thank you for those who are tuning in. I am founder of Attemla Consulting, and right now our initiative is focusing upon the Healing and Change Lab. And I am so grateful to have such a space right now because we need it in such a times as this. It really is a space for us to really gather and be able to build community, really be in a place where we are upon our three pathways of dreaming, collective care, and practice. It's important to acknowledge that, without dreaming, there's a space of like, how are we reimagining what can be, right? Without that collective care, it leads out to greater burnout, right? And exhaustion. And that part of without practice, how do we allow ourselves to shift? And I think that's been so cool to be able to navigate that and be in that space. And so I am loving that, but I also cannot say I'm by myself. I started off as a solopreneur, but I have a consortium of amazing, practitioners of, perinatal therapy or the space of sociology or civil rights attorney, IT, and, community, communications and project management, youth development. We got some folks who are also doing integrative wellness and somatics. Social workers, it's just a great feeling to be immersed with other practitioners and being able to navigate these spaces together. So we need it. We so need it. And a lot of people are seeking what we are creating. And we're so happy to be able to share that with the world.
Oh, I love that. I love that because I talk about this a lot, this like community of care practice and what that looks like.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that it has been this thing that has just been like bubbling, right? Bubbling over the few years. Now we see like, oh, this is why, right?
This is why. Yep.
And so I think that we need more examples of what it looks like to have a community practice, to have one that is rooted in our Blackness, our joy.
Yes.
And so thank you for doing this work. It's not easy.
It's not. And that's the part. We actually have also part of like branding is our Substack called Shift Ain't Easy. Wordplay, right? Like shit ain't easy. Shift ain't easy. And being able to acknowledge like that shift. Woo! Being able to evolve. Like how do you navigate that? I was thinking about ancestor, Auntie Harriet Tubman, like being a place where, she said more folks knew that they were slaves, how many folks she could have helped, right? And so I think that's the part of even in today's time, like how are we being in a place where we give ourselves spaces to have softness, to unlearn, learn, to be in a place that a lot of the things that are showing up is like trauma responses instead of who we really are. And I'm really grateful to have those soft spaces because it's so needed for us, especially as Black folks.
Yeah, absolutely. This was years ago. Well, maybe not that long ago. We did a little wellness happy hour for a group a few years ago, which was really the first time that I got to see your work and see the power. It was one of the group's most favorite experiences, right? Because they had never experienced that. They didn't know what they were getting into. But that's what I love about this work is one, it can be so inviting and so opening and so healing. And people don't even realize that.
That part, I think that time we had that happy hour was really amazing. I got to be with you and another practitioner. I was like, oh my gosh, this is really amazing. And it was so in line because that's the work we do is very experiential learning practices and experiential learning facilitation. And it's just like being in the moment where we can just truly be in a space where we don't have to have these masks on and following like this type of status quo that we know has been so harmful for us. And to come into a space where we can just gently give ourselves space to just be. And so we do a lot of somatic work. And so I'm a somatic practitioner and be able to name that. And so we were to engage some of the theories that were presented and really place them to like a practice of what it means to connect with your body and what it means to acknowledge what your body is speaking about. Because sometimes we just be, most of the time, let's be real, we are in our heads. And this is all we're doing is just focusing what's going on in the brain or what's going on in the amygdala, all that. And then realizing like, oh, what is my body saying though? And so that's been really cool. So I'm grateful that you brought that up because it's been real cool to see how other folks have allowed us to come on in this space and be in a space of softness.
Yeah, I love that. We've been doing a lot of conversations about joy as resistance, cultivating and being intentional about cultivating that. And so when we decided that this was going to be the focus for season 1, I immediately thought of you, one, because you've been doing this really cool thing where you're streaming. Is it weekly? It's weekly.
Yeah, every second. Okay, so I'm doing the lab weekly, the Healing and Change lab weekly, and then every second and fourth Thursday, I'm doing a journal prompting and DJ set.
Yeah, I love it. Because it's joy. Listen, it is a true embodiment of joy. And if you all, I'm just gonna say this. Okay, because first of all, music is in our blood, right? Our bodies just feel. And if you get a chance, not if you get a chance, you need to put it in your phone, put it in your calendar to come and experience this because it is absolutely beautiful. We've had a few dance parties in our living room listening to your sets. So tell me about this. What does joy look like for you?
Wow. So in my body right now, it just feels like where it's just unrestricted, unapologetic. There's no regulation upon it. There's a space where I feel like I get to truly be myself without someone naming how I need to show up or how I need to be. It's a space of autonomy. It's a space of realizing that my joy is resistance. It's something I've heard my grandmother say. I say, Grandma, you grew up in the rural South. You grew up in, well, I should say the South, right? In Jim Crow South. And Jim Crow is well and alive in 2025. And I said, how did you navigate, seeing the color signs, the white signs? And she said, I just lived. And I said, what? She said, I just lived. Like living is the resistance. And so I think about that joy of just like, I get goosebumps hearing about it all the time. I'm just like, when she said that, I was like, yeah, that's joy right there to be in a space of like, I'm still here. Right. Yeah. And even if I'm an ancestor, and I like this work from Lillard-Brown kid, Angelica Frosto, Chicana out of Chicago. She has amazing work. So shout out to her and shout out to them. But the part where she says we are living ancestors, like we will become ancestors at some point. And so being able to acknowledge like our time here, as well as the preparation of becoming intergalactic ancestors. And so that's joy to me. Joy is community. Joy is love. Joy is pleasure. Joy is being able to dream beyond what we thought we had to be. And to notice a different universe, a different space, a different galaxy, a way of being. So that's to me, but not limited to what joy is for me right now.
Yeah. Was there a point or a moment that was really influential or pivotal? A moment that had you kind of like step back and say, wait a minute, I need to cultivate this for my people.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that's good. Because I'm looking, I can see kind of like the timeline, right? If I'm doing this visual timeline. And I think, I must say it started with a bit of migrating to South Korea. Oh. And I know that may seem like how, but it's all interconnected. Let me slow down and say this. I think one of the things I had been able to acknowledge being within the Korean community in South Korea during the last recession, mind you, because that was like why I left anyway. So I was displaced from a space where I could not survive, could not thrive at all. So migrating to South Korea was really important to me to see like what else can there be. And so I learned, like, in the Korean community, there are various similarities to the Black community, such as, like, there's, of course, rice is a staple, right? But there's this part where I remember eating on some what is called bonjuk, which is like a porridge, a rice porridge. And I said, this looks like grits. Right? They have a space too of having beans. The beans are sweeter, right? In South Korea, and that we would have more savory. The fried chicken, don't get it twisted. I know y'all. We're gonna have that joy too. Today that the fried chicken is really good.
I hear that a lot.
It's so good. It's so good. I told my mama about it. I said, Mama, your chicken is good, but my goodness. So having that space of naming that, there was a part for me to see like how they navigated drinking beer and chicken. And for me, like, that was a part for me to go, here in America, that would be considered hood, ghetto, things that so like, but it was like a science of like, yo, you drink the beer so that actually it ease down the grease, right? And I was just like, that makes sense.
That makes total sense.
That makes total sense. And so I was just like, so it helped me to reclaim a lot of what I saw in a different culture, that like the intersectionality. I love Kimberly Crenshaw, like, coining that. The intersectionality was so important for me to reclaim who I was in a space to get back to indigenous paths, right? And so what I come from that, and to say like that helped me from that last space to come back to America and go, yo, I've seen something else, you know? And then it helped me to kind of be in a place where I feel like I was tapping into a little bit of like Afrofuturism when it comes to like Octavia Butler. And I was migrated from, from South Korea back to Seattle. And a lot of people don't know that actually Octavia Butler lived in Lake Forest, Washington, which is not too far from Seattle. And to have her space within that space was just amazing. I never got to meet them. I never got to meet her at all, but just know folks who have buffered, you know? And so I think about the parts for me that helped me to understand, like, I want to create that space where I had a moment to like have autonomy upon my body. Don't get me wrong, like South Korea also has levels of their oppression, all those things that happen as well. But I wasn't scared to walk to the grocery store or to a little market at 2 a.m. in the morning and not be considered if like I'm going to die or get hurt, if I'm going to be murdered. And just trigger warning, y'all. I'm sorry. Activation warning. Just naming all of that. That was a part of me that was like, oh my gosh, I have autonomy here. There was moments where I was just able to regulate my body in a space where I couldn't regulate it here. Coming back felt a lot of charge, right? Of being able to say like, oh, everybody kind of saying, welcome back to the real world. The real world. Like I've been traveling. I've been on my Octavia Butler. I've been in a space where I'm just like Afrofuturism, Yeah. And so I think when I started to do that, and then I started working around prison abolitionism work, right? And seeing how bodies that have been and continue to be incarcerated, especially Black bodies, and be in a space where I'm like, where do we have softness? Where do we have space of liberation when it comes to this? How do people get to integrate once again? And then even further, led me to more in the place of like workplace wellness, being able to acknowledge the psychological safety that a lot of people don't get to participate within. How many times have we sat at a computer trying to get an email because it definitely has activated us? Huge microaggressions that have happened towards our body, and we just sitting there because we're just trying to just settle.
Yeah.
And not realizing that we can't even type this email out. So that's the things I started thinking about, like, how can I make space for just Black bodies? And then also myself, I'm associate licensed therapist in Washington State. And our specialty is working with Black and brown bodies, working with indigenous bodies, working with people of the global majority. And it's been really amazing to have such a space and a specialization to do so. Yeah. And so that is the areas where I was like, oh, I want greater softness for us. And then working just specifically around like women. We have had contracts where we've seen Black women and Black femmes, folks who are just wanting to build out their business. And we've been able to help that with capacity building in some of our contracts. And some of the things we've had to notice is like some of our, just Black women, just Black femmes, like just the folks, even gender nonconforming, be in a place where they are acknowledging that their bodies are not settled to even do some of the mission building or the next phase. And so we're just like, can we get you to baseline? To a space where you just feel comfortable with what's going on. So therefore, it's just not more and more and more stress upon the body, more hypervigilance upon the body. And so that's where we've been able to create these spaces of resting spaces. And shout out to Audre Lorde and Trisha Hersey and Sonia Renee Taylor, all those folks who are doing amazing, amazing work right now. Resma Minicum, doing some amazing work. So just acknowledging all those levels have helped me to be able to create these spaces, especially the collective care. That's one of our, that's the part right there. People love the collective care spaces with us. Like, it's really cool. That's something we keep getting called back for.
Yeah, I love that because you're absolutely right. I think when Holistree started, well, gosh, I don't even, we're old, y'all. We are old. I'm grateful to be this old because we've had the opportunity to shift and to pivot each time. So I'm grateful for that. But one of the things that does get hard in this work is witnessing what the world does to our people.
That's right. That's right.
It was hard. I'll never forget a company had hired me to do some wellness activities for their staff retreat. And it was maybe about 6 or 7 women. 4 of them were Black women. So they're the majority in the space, right? And it was virtual because we were still in the time of the pandemic. And I like to make a point when things are virtual to take the ease off, right? Like you don't have to have your camera on.
That's right.
Right?
That's right.
And they could not wrap their minds around, what do you mean I don't have to have my camera on?
That's right.
One woman said she had not eaten or gone to the bathroom the entire day because it was like a 9-hour little retreat, virtual retreat.
Yeah.
She was just so afraid of not being on the camera because if I'm not being seen, I must not be doing my work, and I didn't like it.
Yeah.
And that hurt my heart so much. These are older women. And so let me acknowledge, let me acknowledge the privilege that I've had in work environments because I've only had to deal with an issue once in my entire working for somebody else experience. Right? And so it shocked me. I could see it in her demeanor on camera, in her body. And it just really did something. And so then it makes it hard, right? Because I'm doing body work with you. Yeah.
That's right.
And now I can absorb this like anxiety, this fear, and now I'm feeling bad for you. It's this, listen, these spaces, and I say that to say, I think this is why collective care spaces have become so popular.
Yes.
Because people are experiencing care in a way that they have not experienced before. Because usually care, right, for them may have come from family, friends, or themselves, not from the people they work with.
That's right. Not from
the community.
Yep.
You know? And so that in itself is a form of joy as resistance.
Yeah, that part. And I think it's like salve. It's medicine for everything we've been going on and going through these past currently. Our nation is really, really experiencing a constitutional crisis. This is really happening in real time. And we're in a space where before as well, just being a place, and I just want to say COVID is well and alive and the various intersectionalities and variations of it. And being able to name, like, we've gone through a lot. It's been a lot these past just half of a decade. And we're not even at, 2030.
Yeah.
We're just in a place where it's like 5 years ago. If we think about it, like 5 years, half of a decade. Yeah. And so what we've been going through has just been so much. And we need the space to have care. We need a space to have softness, a space to acknowledge that we just can't keep pushing through. That's why I've been gravitating towards like the NAP ministry or gravitated towards Audre Lorde or even a space of, especially being in a space of mental health and emotional wellness. And that also comes with body wellness. So the body's not an apology with Sonia Renee Taylor. Being able to name that because it's like we apologize for our bodies, right? For just existing, for being. And then learning how I've been learning just from Audre Lorde and being reminded of that. And also from Trisha, just being able to name like how much we have equated our productivity to thinking that's going to get us into a space of like be adjacent to allowing folks to see our humanity. And that's been hard. That's like you named, the person you would be in community with who was not able to like just take care of themselves. But there's so many folks who are just like, as soon as we name, like, how can we give you a moment of softness or rest? It's like, what you mean? There's like resistance. It's a pushback. I got to pay my bills. We didn't say we're not paying your bills.
I'm not telling you to quit your job.
No, I might say to quit your job. This is definitely coming from a space of acknowledging, and I think we have to come from a space too to help us to acknowledge that is something that feels very like we're not trying to end your livelihood in that space, but being able to acknowledge your livelihood is not just working.
Right.
And yeah, and I've also been able to have ouch moments for myself and to acknowledge that COVID also presented the space where I love from Dr. Hayes's model of acknowledging that there's parts of us that we don't realize is part of like disability and come from a disability justice lens, that we are all temporarily able-bodied if we're not in a space of disability, right? Yeah. And so being able to name, like, when we think about the parts of like our worth is not connected to productivity, because there's folks who don't work. Mm-hmm. And you're saying they're not valuable, they're not human, they don't deserve, right? So that's the part that I've been learning too, was like, how do we reclaim our humanity beyond just labor?
Yeah.
Especially as Black women. My gosh.
Oof, that's real. And that's really why we started going harder for retreating.
Yeah.
Because it kind of goes hand in hand with what you were saying about seeing the world, right? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. First of all, the world is so large.
It is.
Right? Like, we kind of have an idea, but we have no idea. Right? And so there's something really beautiful about someone. Actually, let me correct myself, because I've been really making it a point to say Black women.
Yes, Black women. You're right.
That we choose ourselves, mm-hmm. right? Despite the fear, the hesitation, or the voices, the people telling mm-hmm. you can't, right? They say yes, and they go on this adventure.
Yeah.
And they see, one, how the world sees us.
Yeah.
Just not always. Sometimes they are surprised.
Yeah.
Because we have been convinced that the world, the global world, hates us, and that's not fact, right? And
it's not.
It's so beautiful to witness that, and then to witness what happens in retreats is it allows spaciousness for Black women to breathe.
Yes.
Even if it's just for a moment, right? To breathe and to imagine what a sweet life.
Yes.
What softness looks like, feels like, smells like. And that's how you manifest it. You got to feel it in your body.
You do. That's so true.
So I love that, because I think that it's a beautiful tool in allowing us to see the possibility, to feel the possibility.
That's so true. I like how you said breathe. I actually brought that into my last, our lab, the Healing and Change lab, right? So we're doing a series, and shout out to Hillman Talk and TikTok University, and just, I say, real life universities. Every day we are participating in some form of learning and unlearning. And Dr. Barlow, who actually was the founder of Just Having a Moment, where she was just sharing her information to her students, and it just took off, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm a part of that, right? That part of that remnant of just like, hey, it just took off. Here, I'm sharing some resources too. And so one of the things I had named in this past, just this last week, because we feature every Thursday, and that's been really cool. And one of the things I said, what allowed me to do when I migrated was it allowed me to breathe. Mm-hmm. And I was like, my goodness, like, it allowed me to truly breathe. And that's what I love. That's what I love about the spaces of visiting other places, because it helped me to see myself in a different light, into a different space. Even when I've had time to visit different countries, it allowed me to go, how am I seen? And you're right. There is this feeling of like, oh, I'm not going to be cared for. But I remember, when I was in Poland.
Wow.
Polish. Okay. I know. Yeah, my best friend is Polish. Yeah, so for those who don't know, if you know, you know, but those will find out later that I used to play college basketball for a community college in Illinois, which is awesome. And we played for an amazing, amazing coach who is a living legend. And one of the things that happened for us this time in about the past, 3 years, we became Hall of Famers for our team as well. So that was really amazing. But one of the things, I got to meet some amazing just women. Oh my gosh, folks who are just around this world, who I'm so grateful I got to have the chance to build community with and have lifelong team, right? Teamship with and relationship with. And so one of the things I'm moving myself or just migrating to Poland was really amazing because I got to see how I was welcomed. I was welcomed. It was they kept calling me, and I want to be careful, just not overly careful. My dog wants to be in the mix as well. Not overly careful, but be in a space where I remember the term mushonik. I think that's the term, where it's just kind of ooh, beautiful chocolate baby. However, there's some things I feel like it's kind of borderline, darn near racist, but it wasn't to be an intention of purposely trying to do that. It was more of oh my gosh, you are so beautiful. Mm-hmm. And then I kept hearing this, Josephine. I said, what? What y'all mean? You talking about Josephine? It was really cool to have that space of acknowledging whoa, this is really cool, that such legacy of Blackness, especially a Black woman. Yeah. And that's what they knew. It wasn't and no shade, no tea to the folks of today, Beyonce. It was Josephine. I was what? Uh-huh. But that's what they knew of a Black, beautiful woman, And so I think about that. I was already in Poland. And it was interesting because Poland has a history too, of just kind of Underground Railroad, things that folks don't talk about when it comes to Jewish, just taking care of Jewish just bodies and communities, during the war. Yeah. So I think about all that. I had to take a pause there for a moment because I was whoa, that was a moment to breathe as well, because I didn't know. They had projects. They had ghettos. Just I'm from Waukegan. Mm-hmm. I'm from, greater land of Chicago. And it's just what? That's some of the things I grew up in, So, yeah. Section A. My mama grew up in the projects, but still. It's real. Just being able to name that. Mm-hmm.
I was not expecting you to say Poland.
Oh, right? That's what.
That though. That's really beautiful. First of all, I love when anyone can surprise me. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
Listen, okay, Poland.
Yeah, and let me just say one more thing. My best friend, shout out to Daria. I appreciate you, Siostra, the singing sister in Polish. She said she watched my body and she was like, sis, you don't have to worry about being hurt or harmed. I know our people look stoic. And so I thought Eastern Europe meant they would be scared of us as Black folks or Black women. No, she was this is just how we it's a way to kind of protect us or a way to kind of navigate. We're just kind of like this. But when you come, every time she took me to somebody's house, felt like a Black household. They was feeding me. And if I did not eat, it was kind of disrespectful. Yeah. Right. So I was oh, and then they had I forgot what we call it, but it's not, I don't really eat pork like that, but I do eat pork, it's just not all of it, but it was hog maws. And I was just y'all got something like that here? What y'all doing? What y'all know about this? And that was interesting to kind of see the intersectionality of just spaces. But I think sometimes when that intersectionality shows up, it goes, oh, y'all had to make do as well. When we had to make do, and how you made things out of food or whatever it may be. And so that was really cool. That was a cool thing to see. And it's very homogenous, of course, very white-centered. Same thing with South Korea. It's very Asian-centered, right? But it really helped me to kind of see some things. So I'm looking forward to being in the motherland, the Caribbean. I've been to Cuba, which is cool, too, to see us. And they told me in Spanish, bring y'all, keep coming back here. Come here. We are here. Your sisters, your brothers are here. And I was oh, my gosh, this is so amazing.
Yeah, when we were in Kenya, it was, first of all, I had a whole identity crisis when we came back because I was who am I, right? What am I doing with myself? I actually, immediately when we came back, I ordered a 23andMe because I wanted to know.
Wow, yeah.
Because when you go, right, the first thing that was so beautiful was everywhere was brown faces and white folk were the minority, right? And so it was noticeable. Whereas here, right, I know when I walk into a space, what am I doing, right? I'm it's only 3 Black folk in here.
That's right.
But there, I noticed the flip, right? It was oh, everywhere I look, down to the paintings, ads on the ads on billboards.
Yeah.
Everything was just Black.
Yeah.
So that was beautiful. And the other piece was everyone would ask what tribe was I?
Oh.
And so, now, first of all, I panicked because I don't know. I was like, I don't know. I don't know what people. I don't know where I come from. It's the
I'll be the
identity
same way.
crisis, and so I felt there was this just, I could feel it in my chest, right? Like how
Yeah.
beautiful it was. We had,
Yeah.
my wife has friends there, and so we had spent the day with her friend's family, and it was beautiful because the husband and wife, so the wife's sisters were there. They spoke a completely different language than her husband because they had their tribal language.
Yeah.
Right? And so it was really cute because it made me think about when you're a kid, right? And you create a little language with your friends.
Yeah.
I always joke about my dad and his cousins because they have their own little language with each other.
Oh, wow. That's cool.
I mean, what are you saying? But they know exactly. And so that's what it was like in Kenya. And I just remember thinking how beautiful it is that you can have your own language with your people within a language, in a culture. You know what I mean? And they could tell you exactly who they came from.
That's right. That's so true. Oh, that part, right? It's something that we talk about in actually mental health and just practicing from a decolonizing lens. Shout out to Dr. Jennifer Mullen, doing great work with decolonizing therapy. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that is important, it comes from an indigenous practice as well, especially in naming like historical loss scale. Mm-hmm. So all the things you have lost, from land to language to not knowing where your peoples first were dropped off, or even before the trauma, what was happening before, I think about is when we were younger, we used to always be like, we are Nubian, just especially in the 90s. Shout out 80s babies, 90s kids. We are Nubian. It's just like, and I think that's the part. Like, I know we have our own like culture that we have created here in America as Black Americans, but being able to also name like what were we actually connecting with our ancestors, right? Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's powerful.
Mm-hmm.
So, will you dream with me for a second?
Yes, for sure. Love dreaming.
We have this little saying about living a sweet life.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Every day is not always sunshine and rainbows, but sweetness shows up in every aspect of your life. And so when you dream about it, when you think about it, what does that look like for you? What is a sweet life?
I almost feel a little bit emotional because like I don't get asked this question a lot, but I'm like giving myself space to dream about it more lately, especially lately. But when I think about this, I think about spaces where no matter where I'm at in the world, that I'm able to provide a space of like rest, a space of softness, a space of where I can build with community. A space that doesn't feel like it has so many borders and boundaries, I think about one place that has been really helpful for me to see is different. And I can't remember this company's name, and I want to shout them out, but I can't remember their name. But they have practitioners within there, and I think it's in New York actually, because I think I brought it up to your wife. Like, oh my gosh! But it's this amazing place where they have like tarot readers who are part of the healing. They have therapists within a space. They have yoga Reiki practitioner. They have so many folks, and they're all in that one space, and you can get that type of care. And so I think about that. I would love spaces like that where I could be in communities such as that, to be in a place where we can be in community to help folks to be in a place to settle their bodies. I like that term from like listening from Dr. Resmaa Menakem talking about the space of there's a difference between calming and settling the body. No spiritual bypassing, just being in a space where we can just settle the body. And I think that's one of the things that I look forward to being a part of, is creating that. And then also I think one of the things is just being able to dream and be a part of like the dreaming collective who is dreaming beyond what this is. Not to be in a place of escape, but maybe that also is your escape route, right? To dream. It's defiance, it's act of defiance. So I think about that, and I think about the spaces of where I can just, I've been on vacations where I'm just like, oh my gosh, like Indonesia was amazing for me. Like I really love that. I felt like I just laid in a hammock and I could just hear the water, and the only thing that woke me up was a mosquito. And so it's just like, you know what I mean? Like I didn't feel scared I was going to get hurt or harmed. So like that's the type of parts that I want to be in. It's like having a space where I can just rest and not be in such hypervigilance, not be in such a space where I'm wondering where my next invoice is going to come from or my next space, but just like it's ease. It's just ease.
That's beautiful. That's sweet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is sweet. It felt sweet. Like, I feel like I could taste that sweetness too.
Okay.
Like sweet as a mango, and mango that's like really from like the indigenous parts, like not just imported in.
Oh, I love that. Because what do we say? That's how you manifest. You gotta feel it. You gotta taste it.
Thank you. Yeah, that's really good. I like this. Yeah.
That's beautiful. I've been asking our guests to share with us a book or a poem that has inspired them. And so, what did you bring for us today?
Oh my goodness. I think it's really great, especially knowing that we're speaking about a space of like dreaming and joy and resistance. Is I brought in Don Miguel Ruiz's The Four Agreements. Oh, I love this book. I feel like it's been a way for me to carry a sacred like book with me. And because we are also in a space where we practice, dreaming and the collective care and the practice, those three pathways have been helpful for us and they're so intersectional. And so there's a little excerpt here that I would love to read that's just in a space where it helps us to understand like why dreaming is so important. So this is on page 1, chapter 1, and it names Domestication and the Dream of the Planet. What you are seeing and hearing right now is nothing but a dream. You are dreaming right now in this moment. You are dreaming with the brain awake. Dreaming is the main function of the mind, and the mind dreams 24 hours a day. It dreams when the brain is awake. It also dreams when the brain is asleep. The difference is that when the brain is awake, there is a material frame that makes us perceive things in a linear way. When we go to sleep, we do not have the frame, and the dream has a tendency to change constantly. Humans are dreaming all the time. Before we were born, the humans before us created a big outside dream that we will call society's dream or the dream of the planet. The dream of the planet is the collective dream of billions of smaller personal dreams, which together create a dream of a family, a dream of community, a dream of a city, a dream of a country, and finally a dream of the whole humanity. The dream of the planet includes all of society's rules, its beliefs, its laws, its religions, its different cultures and ways to be, its government, schools, social events, and holidays. So when I think about this, I'm like, what are we dreaming? Like I'm going back to the Blackfoot Nation and Dr. Cindy Blackstock, shout out to an amazing Indigenous scholar, and naming how like our cultural perpetuity, what were the 7 generations before us dreaming? And what are the 7 like us? Like what are we dreaming for the next 7 generations? And so, and I've heard resonance extended to like almost 12 or even 14, and so being able to name like what are we dreaming, because this ain't it. This is not it. And we sometimes forget that. We always want to talk about like the trauma that comes from that, but I'm like, somebody had the audacity upon them 7 generations, and I want to tell you, can we practice what 7 generations almost feel like? Because I've had 4. I'm part of the 4. So let me just name this. So I want to give a shout out to Jaleesa Milton, who's a civil rights attorney doing some amazing work and is one of our amazing resident consultants at our firm. And I'm so grateful to be in community with them. But they gave me this wording. I am a 4th generation Jim Crow refugee. I was like, whoa. So I'm going to name that. So in my time, I'm 41. So I'm an 80s baby, 90s kid. I've been able to meet my great grandmother, and she lived to almost 100, if not más o menos. And she was from and born Vicksburg, Mississippi. And I remember hearing them talk about this when I was younger, that there used to be cannons in the backyard. And I was like, cannons? What y'all talking about? Well, if you know, Vicksburg, Mississippi is the home of the Civil War. Right? And so I was like, what is cannons? And that's what they saw. And I want to give also honor that we used to have land. They talk about the zuzu trees and the different type of like fruits I've never heard of. It almost felt so like mythological, like mythology, mythological. And so being able to name that was just like, well, we had land. But because like the migrations, the having to, after post antebellum slavery, like we couldn't keep it up. And so, of course, we know how things, eminent domain, also lack of literacy, just signing with the X and losing all of that. So that's what I know coming from that part. Then I have my grandmother who's still living, third generation. So being able to come, or maybe say first and then second generation. So coming to that space of navigating where she grew up in Vicksburg, Mississippi, born there, and then migrated to the north. So getting to Chicago, proper side, right? And then getting into Waukegan. And then my mom was born, and she was born in the projects, which is real. Right there in Waukegan, saw a lot, including the race riots that happened there in Waukegan, Chicago. And then I was born on Section 8, and being able to name like how that navigated everything, but it also navigated us being part of naming. My mother was in the military, so got us to travel and a lot of seeing different items. Y'all, that's 4 generations out of 7.
Wow.
That's 4 generations out of 7. So that means that when I heard about my granny Cora and Grandpa Jefferson, who we would say, oh Lord, yeah, they were sharecroppers. That picture looked like they were, And my great grandmother said that we had freed folks, right? Mm. And so with that being stated, she lived to know her grandmother. So that's not far.
Yeah, that's not far at all.
So I just want to just honor and just name that. What are we dreaming, y'all?
Well, what are we dreaming? What are
we? That part. So I'm learning how to embrace. Like, what am I choosing to dream about? What do I want to dream about? What are some things I don't even feel like it's possible? Like, I think about myself, like I even nourish my younger self. And I say younger, so that even has to be like the inner child. It's just the inner adult, the young adult.
Right.
I'm a social worker. And according to social work, and sometimes the trauma that comes with the words hearing social work, it sounds like dividing families, right? That's what we know. I mean, I'm from the hood. We had to hide that. Like my mom and my grandma would say, they had to hide the iron. Or hide the extra whatever that was there because here comes a social worker. Well, in a space when I get to learn that as a social worker, I really get to participate in like social impact, decolonizing practices. So grateful that I get to be in a space where social work doesn't make me. I actually get to influence it. I've traveled. I've seen so many things for international social work, or being in a space where I'm doing hospice work, or doing work I've done, being a practitioner, decolonizing therapist, all those levels, being a consultant who's being able to create spaces where I've merged 2 prominent universities together because of my work. And that's really amazing. Like to know, like, that's the depth that I have with who I am and what I'm becoming, what I dare to dream. And so I'm grateful. I'm so grateful. There's some things that I feel like I must admit, Rakita, like I have held so many things to my chest, and I really want to keep sharing them with the world because it is important for me to dare to dream. I heard Lovey say this, and it's so amazing. She said, like, when we don't really share who we are, it actually sets us up to be erased.
Yeah. Ooh,
and I'm paraphrasing, so I want to name that, right? I'm paraphrasing. So thank you, Lovey, for talking about that. But being to name, like, it is that part of naming that when I don't share who I am, it is setting up to be erased and who I and what I'm being able to do. So yeah, being able to say like my work has, and I'm not a PhD, and no shade, no tea to being PhD or not, just being able to name like my work is valid and it's brought 2 top universities together because of my work, and being able to speak at the New York Academy of Medicine and talk about my work. It's just been like, what? So this is amazing to have that. So that's the type of dreaming I'm talking about, who I come from, and just being reminded that, especially during this time, when we're seeing things being dismantled, the empire falling, being able to name, like, what are you dreaming? What's the collective care you need? What's the practices that you're doing? And hence why we have the lab happening every Thursday, right? Yeah. Just to practice.
Well, listen, first of all, I want to take this time to celebrate you, to honor you, okay?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
Amazing. I think you're absolutely right. Sometimes we hold things so close to ourselves.
Yeah.
you're worried about being judged or what is it? People think like, oh, what is the word I'm looking for when they think you're bragging, right? Like I'm bragging about
I'm not humble, or you being too much, or
listen, that phrase, you being too much. We talked about this in our one of our episodes. I had someone say that to me once. It was a man. You're doing too much, and I was like, what do you mean?
That part.
So I just want to give you your flowers.
Thank you.
Thank you for this work, because it is not easy. But you have absolutely been anointed, blessed, chosen to do this work, and you do it beautifully.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much. And can I just really just say thank you authentically, but also say you're doing some amazing work. And I'm so grateful for the Sweet Life. I'm so grateful for all that you're doing. I've definitely been able to watch from afar, up close, and I look forward to also joining in a retreat in the future as well, and being able to name, like, gosh, the work you're doing is very liberating. It's so needed, Rakita. It's so needed.
Thank you, girl. I'm practicing saying, you should like, oh no.
Oh yes, that's you. You know what I mean? That's you. And I've been in your play space as well, and it's been so amazing to be with other practitioners. And I must admit, when I came in at first, I was like, whoa, this feels like a culture shock, because sometimes when you're living in Seattle for so long, you're just like, oh my gosh, it's so white-centered. And we do have Blackness, don't get it twisted. I'm so grateful. Thank you for all the Black folks like in Seattle, but just naming, like, sometimes when it's so white-centered, right? Like, it's different from Atlanta. It's different from different parts of, like, just the South, especially when I think about, like, Houston, Atlanta, other folks that just allow us to be just Blackness-centered. So that's really amazing.
Well, as we wrap this up, tell people how they can get in contact with you, how they can be in your energy.
Yes, feel free to check us out on YouTube, and that is under the handle of Almetta, sounds like cheetah, ALMETTA_creates. That's Almetta_creates. And that's on Instagram, YouTube, and also TikTok. Okay, so we have that. If you're on Substack, definitely check us out under Shift, like shit, but Shift ain't easy. Shift ain't easy. We're also telling stories there, which is really awesome. And then most of all, our website is Attemla Consulting. And that's ATTEMLA. That's my name spelled backwards. Consulting.com, and check us out there. Right now, what we are doing is being able to give people the space to be able to sign up. We have the place to join our wait list, because we're going to be able to expand and launch the lab, and we'll have our Patreon, the Healing and Change Lab, coming soon. And so giving you the space where you have more exclusive content with us. You have the opportunity to really do workshops with us, have times for us to place theories into practice. And then shout out to the companies and organizations that are struggling right now. Hey, we are here. We are here to support you. Being able to know that it is important to also acknowledge, like, how is your team really doing? Like, how are y'all doing? Especially like the Black women who's in leadership, burnt out, exhausted. How can we best support you in this space? And then most of all, individuals. Like, how can we just be able to help you navigate these levels? So check us out. We're so excited. There's so much more to come, and stay tuned.
And we will be sure to include that information in the description of the episode so people have it. Because listen, if you don't have a community of care practice yet, we got you.
Yes, we do. We do.
Thank you again, Almetta, for sharing a little bit of yourself today with us.
Yeah, thank you for the Sweet Life, Rakita. I'm so happy, and thank you for all that you're doing. This is so amazing, and I look forward to just supporting you in so many ways in the future as well.
Thank you.
Yes.
And if, to our listeners, if this episode resonated with you, share it with somebody. Share it with another Black woman who needs to hear this. We're here every Thursday, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can connect with us here. Follow us on Instagram at Under the Holistree. And until next time, may your days be filled with ease, joy, and just the right amount of sweetness. Peace, y'all.